Okay, now we're going to turn to the board discussion of the IG report. And I'd like to divide this into a couple different sections. First, I'd like the charter school office, along with Rhoda, to join us at the table. I want to sort of say, you know, here's what the IG said, and here's what we know and think about all of that. I'm going to ask you, Commissioner, at some point to talk about some of the, you mentioned it earlier, but there are some things we've learned. We had already made some changes to our own processes, and so we want to take, you know, what can we learn from this, and how can we improve our language to make sure there's no ambiguity. And then I want the board to discuss sort of where we are now. And so I'm going to, in the interest of time, just turn it right over to Rhoda and ask her to.
Yeah, it was for last special meeting. It was under special meeting.
Sorry. It's tab 2 under this.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Banta, Commissioner, members of the board. The materials are under the tab, I think it was tab 2 initially, for the special meeting. You have copies of the Inspector General's letter to the governor, dated January 2nd, copies of his letter to the legislators, Senator Tarr and Representative Ferranti, dated January 5th. You have the Commissioner's response in the form of a memo to you, the board. You have a letter that I have sent to Secretary of State Galvin about the public records issues, and you have a copy of an email from Chair Banta. The Commissioner has asked me to go over the key points in the Inspector General's report. You heard from the Inspector General this morning, as well as from others from Gloucester, and the legislators from Gloucester, and has asked me to summarize also the response. And then I think he's going to pick up on the lessons learned and how we go forward from here. Just to put this in context and remind you of what I'm sure you need no reminding of, the board granted this charter in February of 2009. It is, under state law, a license that's valid for 5 years unless it's revoked for cause. The board last had a thorough discussion of this at its special meeting on November 16th. It took a vote on November 17th that, having reviewed and considered all the issues that had been presented about the charter after that thorough discussion, the board concluded that the issues do not provide grounds for revocation of the charter. The Inspector General, since that time, has reviewed the process that the department and the board followed in granting the charter and has issued the documents that you have in your materials. He has concluded, as he summarized for you this morning, that based on his review of the statute, the regulation, the published procedures, that the charter was granted without this department and this board having determined that the applicant met the established criteria in accordance with established procedures. Consequently, the Inspector General concludes the charter was never validly awarded and should be deemed void ab initio, meaning at the outset as if it never existed. The Inspector General has 4 key points in his report, as I understand it. And I'll go through them briefly, offer to you my summary of the response that the Commissioner has presented to you, and obviously it's open for questions and discussion among the board. His first assertion is essentially that neither the Commissioner nor the board had authority to reach a conclusion about this particular charter application that was different from the conclusion that the staff of the charter school office reached. And in his report, he refers to a rule. It's actually not a regulation of the board. It is a guidance document, a Q&A document that, as he noted this morning, is still posted on our website. It's a Q&A that accompanies the application for charters that explains how the process works. It lays out the application and approval process. My reading of that Q&A document is that it, in fact, affirms that the judgment on bringing forward a charter application to the board rests with the commissioner. One provision, for example, in that Q&A document that is not quoted in the Inspector General's report says the commissioner makes a final recommendation to the board regarding the award of charters. It's not the charter school office that does so. It is the commissioner as the chief state school officer and as your chief executive officer. The Inspector General's report focuses, understandably, on the answer to another question in this Q&A. The question is, on what grounds may a charter application not receive approval? And there are various grounds listed, various issues that might impede the approval of a charter application. And the last sentence says, the commissioner will not recommend that the board award charters to applicant groups whose applications do not meet the stated criteria found in Appendix H of the application. That's absolutely correct. The commissioner does not bring forward charter applications that don't meet the criteria. Stating that positively, the charter applications he brings forward do meet the criteria. It is his educational judgment on that based on the information that he has gathered from the staff, from the charter school office, from their review, and as that sentence in the Q&A continues, as corroborated in the final interview of the applicant group by the charter school office. In fact, again, in my view, this makes clear that the commissioner recommends those charter applicants whose applications meet the criteria. The commissioner's recommendation certainly is informed by the application and the analysis that the charter school office conducts as corroborated in the final interview that they conduct. My reading of this is that the charter school office conducts the interview. They do that analysis that they present to the commissioner. They do not make the final determination. They do not present the recommendation to you. The commissioner does so. The second general assertion in the Inspector General's report is that the department, contrary to the public records law, did not maintain documents, in fact destroyed documents that should have been maintained. We disagree with this assertion. We think it is an erroneous view of how the process works. The documents in question, and this is explained as these other issues are in the memo that you received from the commissioner on January 6th, the documents in question are the personal notes that are taken by members of the review panels. The review panel is really like a focus group. It is not an evaluation team. They do not make recommendations on whether a charter should go forward or not. The review panel is made up of some department staff and some outside people, school people, including charter school people, who are sent the applications in advance. They're told, make notes, so you can use this 29-page rubric, you've heard reference to that, that lists criteria so that when you come in for the discussion, for the conversation, for this focus group meeting, you won't be starting from scratch. You'll come in with your notes. The instructions to members of those focus groups specifically say, we will keep a written record of the detailed discussion for each final application. The charter school office will not collect your review sheets. This is standard operating procedure, certainly in state government on procurements, in the federal government. Some of you perhaps have served as outside reviewers on grant proposals and so on. It is typical that when outside reviewers are asked to come in and take notes, look at something, and then there is a consensus recommendation or consensus decision, the record, the official record of that process is that consensus recommendation.